Hello, Kira. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first venture info call this year. My name's Susie. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the Director of Ventures at SheEO. If you haven't already, please update your Zoom name to include your pronouns and your country you're calling from. We'd love to know if you're already a SheEO activator. Before we get started, as we do in all calls of SheEO, I want to start us out with a land acknowledgement. So today I want to acknowledge that I am calling in from the unceded ancestral home of the Ramaytush Ohn'oli, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land, in accordance to their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohn'oli have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten the responsibility as the caretaker of this place, and as well as for the people who reside on their traditional territory. Of the approximately 1,500 people who originally inhabited the San Francisco Peninsula prior to the Perpetual expedition in 1769, only one lineage is known to have survived. Their descendants comprises the four main branches of the Ramaytush Ohn'oli people today, who have nearly lost all their cultural languages, with only about 200 words that are recorded. So as guests of this land, I want to acknowledge that I benefit from living and working on the traditional homeland. I'm going to pay my respect by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community and affirming their sovereign rights as First Nations. All right. Welcome to the Venture Application info call. Thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to be talking about the venture application process. And we're going to have a conversation with Becky Cashman, who is one of our founders and ventures in New Zealand, about her application experience and what it means to be in the SheEO community. But this is really a time for everyone here to ask any questions you have about the application, about SheEO, about what it means to be a venture. And we're happy to keep this, any questions you have throughout the process, feel free to put in the chat, feel free to interrupt me. We want to keep this as casual and as informative and as interactive as you would like. So I want to start by introducing, for those who have not heard about SheEO, is what we call the opposite land. SheEO is a community of radically generous women and non-binary folks who are supporting founders working on the world's to-do list. But this is different than any other community I guarantee you've been part of. What we have here is a radically generous community of activators who are here to use their buying power, their network, their expertise, all in the means of creating an equitable and sustainable future. They give their money to this community to support ventures who are working on the world to-do list. So ventures are entrepreneurs who are creating a better world through their businesses and are funded, selected, and supported by our amazing community of activators. So before we get started around the SheEO application process, I want to just tell you a little bit about why SheEO exists. I'm sure you all know, if you're business founders and owners, that for 51% of the population of women non-binary folks, about 2% of venture capital goes into female-founded businesses. And that is a very small number that we want to change. We also know how hard it is to get funding if you're not venture scale. So actually, I'm happy to actually tell a little bit about my background as well. I've worked in startups most of my career. I've also been in the investing world, and it is really, really hard to get funding, especially if you don't tick the boxes, and especially if you don't fit the criteria they're looking for in their set way. So this is why we exist. We understand there's a major gap for funding for women non-binary entrepreneurs, and also how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur myself. I've been the first 5 employee at 3 different startups, and know I have so much respect for all the hard work that you do to create your businesses, and we're here to support you. So what SheEO is that our model is really around the ecosystem. So activators make a radical, generous contribution of $92 a month, and or $1,100 a year, and $1,000 of that goes into the fund, and $100 goes into operation. The $1,000 is then loaned out to ventures that are selected by activators, and this is why you are all here, who are working on the world's to-do list, which is what we call the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Really to say we want to support entrepreneurs who are working to make our world a better place through the SDGs, and we do this through a 0% interest loan. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but the loan actually now is also an optional part of the program. What really is special about the SheEO community and being SheEO Venture is the access to our community and being supported by a sisterhood of radically generous women, non-binary folks who are really here to support you and your venture. But we do have a perpetual fund, and this fund is being able to loan out to ventures who are paying it back, and so we can loan out more money to ventures. And actually, very exciting, in New Zealand, for the first time, we actually now what we call a perpetual fund, which is spillover money that is accessible to our ventures, our already selected ventures, to help get more funding into our amazing ventures. So activators give us money to loan out to ventures in a 0% interest rate that gets paid back in this fund, and that gets perpetually distributed in the community. And that is one of the things that is really special about SheEO, because it's we believe the money and support is here as a renewable resource. So I want to talk a little bit about, if you're interested in applying as a SheEO venture, which is why you're here, talk a little bit about how what makes you qualify to apply. So our eligibility criteria are quite simple. You don't have to be venture scale. You don't have to have hyper growth. It's really all on your own terms. What is really important to us is that you are majority owned, so 51%, and led by women identified or non-binary folks. You have about 50,000 to 2 million in annual recurring revenue. Show us that you have you have some product service in the market, and that you've already started your business and you're getting some revenue. You register as an entity in the region that you're applying to, and that you are working on what we call the world's to-do list. Again, that's the UN's definition of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think Finn can also link to in the chat. We know that we have heard from our ventures that the SheEO has been a really big support and made a really big difference in their businesses. We'll hear a little bit later from Becky about her experience, but this application, this process is designed to be really different from the start. A lot of people say, I don't want to do another pitch competition. I don't want to sign up for another accelerator. I'm too busy. And that's the same thing when you apply to jobs. You just put in your application and you never hear back again. And that is not how we do things here. There's no winner takes all in SheEO. What we really wanted for you to understand through this process is to experience radical generosity. So just by applying, and not even if you don't get selected, you get the benefit and the access to our network. Hundreds of women will see your application, read about your businesses, and you can ask for feedback, you can ask for comments, you can ask for connections, and you can ask for what you need, and our community responds. I've been an activator for over 5 years before I joined the team at SheEO, and one of my favorite process of being an activator is voting and learning about all the amazing, cool businesses that people are running. And I have actually got to know ventures that are not selected because I just really like their businesses, and we got to connect and be able to get connected and have a network even if they're not selected. So it really is about the application process is designed for you to experience radical generosity. The application process is really simple. No jargon, no attachment, no pitch decks. We don't like to use the word pitch here at SheEO. We have 10 questions via text just to understand you, your business, your team, and what problem you're trying to solve. It's incredibly simple. We heard one venture did it at the airport. You can do this on your phone, you can do it on your tablet, you can do it on the go. It's really designed to understand your story and who you are, and not a business evaluation. So want to just also talk a little bit more about our application process. It's very different than any other organization or any other competitions pitches out there. First, there's like no fee to apply. It's this whole program, and being part of community doesn't cost you anything. No equity, no fee, no like commitments all on your own terms. When you apply, you get to connect with a value aligned community who reads and learns about your application, your businesses, offers connections and responses to your ask. And when you are selected, I would call it as a semi-finalist, whether you get to become a final venture or not, you get gifted in a year of being an activator, so access to our community and all our programming and membership to SheEO just by becoming a semi-finalist. And then selective ventures, there'll be 5 selective ventures in New Zealand, receive everything from the community and also one-on-one coaching with our amazing development guides who are praised by every venture we ever talk to as making such a huge difference, and you get one-on-one access to them and the opportunity for up to $100,000 in interest-free loans. What's also really exciting this year is that we're trying to have more options for ventures who are not interested in the loan. If the loan is not suitable for you, or if you didn't want the loan for any reasons, we're also looking at ways we can support you in your fundraising methods, in your bootstrapping, and again, really on your own terms. But if you do decide to get a loan, it's 0% interest and it's paid back over 5 years. So I will stop there, and we can share a little bit more information after, but I want to invite up Becky Cashman, who's the founder of Goodbye and one of our ventures, to answer some questions. I'm going to stop sharing screen so we can see Becky.
Thanks so much, Susie. And I really love hearing, every time I talk to you, I learn something new about your journey in SheEO. And I didn't realize how much evolution has happened even when we've been involved. So I joined SheEO as an activator for the first round of New Zealand, which was 5 years ago. And I realized when I just activated again last month that we had done it, that all that money was going to create that perpetual fund. And I find that just so engaging and exciting. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes to quickly tell my story of how I came to be in SheEO and working now as an activator and a venture. And then just open it up to any questions that anybody has, because you don't really need me to spill at you for too long. So first up, before COVID, we were a reasonably strong growing business, and I was feeling very successful. I was trying to learn to be a CEO, a CEO. I was creating org charts. We'd done our first hires. We were planning on new markets, and we were in growth. And basically what that meant was we were spending absolutely everything to grow. So when COVID hit, we were doing this at the time that us as a tourism serving business took basically a 50% cut in revenue. So I went from feeling pretty darn good about who I was as a business leader and the things that we were doing in the New Zealand economy, to feeling like I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get through this. So I'm the founder and CEO of Goodbye, which makes certified natural skincare for outdoors. And at the exact time that we went into COVID, SheEO started doing weekly calls within the New Zealand community, which is how I met Susie. She was trapped in New Zealand. And my community changed a lot from just kind of popping my money in the first years and then not doing much of anything after that, to actually getting to meet all the other women who were really values-based, very onto it, generous, engaging conversations that started to build over the weeks and months after the first lockdowns. And I realized, God, I really need some help. So I applied to be a venture and went through the process, and I got a lot of help with that. So I thought I'd just share some of the tips that were passed along to me during that time and that really helped me. And one is, when you do your application, to speak in first person voice, to really use that as your platform to talk about the things that you care about, why you do what you do, what you what values you bring, what you vision for yourself, and the opportunity to look into how your business relates to the Sustainable Development Goals is a really powerful process, because I hadn't really looked at what I was doing in relationship to this set of goals, this framework, and when you look at where do you plug in and how do you measure your impact, it's incredibly empowering. Hang on a sec, I'll just make my phone go quiet. In the first person voice, it allows you to speak as if you're speaking to a friend. That's what I would recommend, because as you get into your industry, you start to pick up all the language and the pitch deck of your own version of your industry. And it's really easy to shift into that kind of corporate mode. Even if you're not corporate sized, we all sort of learn that language. So what I would invite you to do is pretend that you're sitting down with a cup of tea, trying to tell somebody who knows nothing about your business, but you know that you really like them personally, why you care about what you're doing and what you want to bring and see happen in the world. Because as an activator that gets to read your application, and Susie was reflecting this as well, we get involved. We read, we love this part of the process, because you just get to see all these different ways that people's love show up to the world, and all these different creative ideas that somebody was willing to put their entire heart, their family, their energy into making a difference or making something happen. And so when you write as if you're writing to a friend, you already know that we're already cheering you on. We already want you to be everything and to get everything that you desire in your process of running your business. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't actually need to take up my entire window of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions or yeah, just.
Yeah, I'll start with a question, Becky. I think you talked a little bit about the application process. So maybe just like if you wanted to share what it was like to go through. I also remember you were asking me for help, what it felt like to ask for help, to get help from the community, and how did the actual application process go for you?
So yeah, some of what I shared is what I learned in that process, because I was already, pitching our business to corporate head offices to have distribution. And so my first version was we, and using a lot of the tech language. And I asked for help amongst some of the women that had been showing up on my calls to review it. And they were really good at saying, I see your business in here, but I can't see you. And that really helped me to just kind of strip back the we language and speak for myself. Yeah. One of the things I will say, just because I think one of the comments was what happened after we became a venture, is that so a business that's 50% down, that's painful. That's a very big business process to go through and accept and realize that all our strategy, all our planning, all our new product development was completely irrelevant in this new environment. And SheEO, I felt a little bit embarrassed to bring my business to the venture process, because we were struggling and I knew it, but I also knew we wanted to go through to the other side. And of my litter of the 5 of us, I call myself the black sheep of the family, because I was the one that was really the COVID distressed business. And the result of SheEO, not only seeing that, because I demonstrated that was happening, but then embracing that and agreeing to participate in the next couple of years has meant everything to me, because we are not the same business that we were pre-COVID. And I'm really proud of that. We've become much more clear about what it is we bring to the world and why. And we resource our projects differently based on essentially what I want to do before it's no longer my business to run. So yeah, it's made a huge impact. The friendships, the relationships, the resourcing, the conversations, or even just knowing that I'm in a friendly audience that just wants the best for my business has made all the difference to my mental health and to my situation with my family. And yeah, so if you're trying to decide if it's a safe place or, everybody needs support and we all need to celebrate each other.
Yeah, I have so many things to say about Becky and how amazing her business. I got to live with Becky for a few days and see her house and meet her kids, her family, where she was making her bomb in her kitchen, and the storing of all the boxes in her house. And it made me a really special connection to the ventures as an activator. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about what we do is when you get to meet a venture and understand their story and really, like I said, seeing the kitchen that when things are made and the kids that are who are labeling, and you have such a different connection to the business than like there's all the other programs. I wanted to highlight one thing that Becky said was asking for help during the application. This is not a test where you can't cheat or ask for help. We are all here to help you to do this application. I remember Becky asking, was like, hey, can you read through my application? And yes, people like activators want to help you through your application. It's again, no, it doesn't count as cheating. It's something that's strongly encouraged. And if you're an activator, you can vote for your own venture. There's nothing bad about that. That's actually a great thing. We want you to vote for yourself. So we are all here to support each other. There's no bad way of doing things. And asking for help is such a big part of what we do here. We have a whole process around ask and gives. So we can start by pressing that by asking for help during the application process. So I want to thank Becky for highlighting that. And I remember that process and also want to offer that to anyone else who think about applying is we are all here to help you with the application. Again, the last question from Becky, was there anything that was surprising to you about this experience at SheEO that's different, like either as your time as an activator or your time as a venture or now? What was the most surprising thing?
I think, you know how your story changes every year. The farther you go down and you have a bit more perspective, your story keeps changing and evolving. And so my story this year is different than a year ago, and then it will be in a year's time. But what's really come out of the last couple of years is that my own professional community is mostly SheEO. Like, I didn't expect to have that much weaving of, I'm working with people who are suppliers, I'm helping out other businesses. So the thing is that it goes in multiple directions, and I'm helping as many businesses as people are helping me. And I think the thing that I'm appreciating the most is that there's some real friendships here. It's beyond, it's people that I'm going to keep in touch with for the rest of my life. And that this is my professional home. And that is an amazing thing to discover. Yeah.
I want to echo that. And I was going to say, I have my wedding in New Zealand this year and invited Becky and her family and some of the other SheEO activators I met in my time in New Zealand, because those are the relationships that you form and the incredible experience that you form because we show up on calls because of SheEO. So it's absolutely incredible. I'm going to go. Is there any last things, Becky, you wanted to tell anyone, the potential applicants about?
I'm just, I'm happy every year I get to review some applications now, and I'm happy to put that invitation out to you on this call. This is the only call I'll do. There are other ventures will do other intro calls, so I don't have to be too scared of being too big of a group. But for anybody that's on this call, if you fill in an application and you want to just connect with me in LinkedIn, SheEO is the only connections that I'll make without asking any questions within LinkedIn, and you can reach out to me there, and then I'm very happy to just to review it and give you an outsider's take on your language and how to tell your story more effectively.
Amazing. Actually, my last thing I'll say about Becky is that she was my virtual gardener and taught me how to garden.
It's true.
Well, I had a camera over FaceTime to be like, Becky, why is this not growing?
It's true. We were doing garden consulting on Zoom.
Yes. And these are the relationships you can make by applying to be a SheEO Venture Advertising Gardener. Okay, amazing. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. We'll have time at the end to ask any other questions. But let me know if you can see my screen again. Yes, great. So yeah, well, now I want to tell you a little bit more about what it means to be a SheEO Venture, which Becky basically just did. Wanted to highlight the really four main components here. It's a really about the ecosystem. So when you become a SheEO Venture, you have access to our amazing community of radically generous women, non-binary folks who are here to support you as your investors, as your customers, as your virtual gardeners, or anything else you need, which is absolutely amazing. You have access to our two development guides, Laura and MJ, who are absolutely amazing, incredible at what they do, and have supported our ventures through their entire process. And I've heard them being referred to as magicians for your ventures. And you get one-on-one access for every 2 weeks for an hour in your first year with our coaches. But they're also available after your first year. Beyond the funding, you get the up to $100,000 in interest-free loans, but also access to other funding and investors in our community. For example, we're actually doing a venture raising showcase for those of our ventures who are raising to get access to investors in our community who want to support ventures on their own terms, and also ventures who are working on the world's to-do list. And what do we say? We have customers and influences, and it's a global network. So Becky's actually working with one of our ventures from Canada. So just because you're a New Zealand venture, it doesn't mean you only get the New Zealand network. You get really access to the entire global community for SheEO. Talk a little bit about the timeline. We can go through this in more process if anyone's interested. It's also on our website, but the venture applications are open now in half an hour already, an hour and a few minutes ago, but basically now it's our official venture application opening on May 10th, and it will be open for a month long until June 10th. And then we will have round one venture selection. So during round one, our activators vote if we believe the venture should move on to the next round. And then we have a short list of what we call advancing ventures that are either between 10 to 15 semifinalists who are then go through a round two voting. During the round two process, you submit an additional 1-minute video and your financials just to confirm that you have the 50 to 100 to 2 million recurring revenue. And again, ask for help. So because there are activators who will help, who are more than happy to help you with your financials and any questions you have about finances. So once the application is done for round two, we have a round two venture selection, and that is happening end of August to early September. And then our ventures will be announced in September and announced to our community in October. And then when you first get onboarded into the SheEO community, we have a full 3-month onboarding process where you'll meet the community, you'll meet myself and Finn, who is part of the venture team, and then you'll meet your coaches, and you'll also start discussing what your funding needs are. And at the end of the 3 months is when you get your funds and your loan dispersed. And then ongoing, you have all the community support and the financial support and everything else we mentioned. The second last thing maybe here I'll say is that one of the really interesting and I think amazing part about SheEO is it's really on your own terms. We don't help you we don't tell you what success looks like. We don't tell you you need to use the funds in a certain way. We don't tell you that you need a certain amount of funding. We don't set any of your targets. You tell us what you need and we help you get there. And I think that's such an incredible model that I don't see in any other accelerator or incubator, is because we're here to support you. And if you don't want to grow, you don't have to. If you don't want to scale, you don't have to. If you don't want to export, you don't have to. We're here to support you about what you want to do and how you want to do it. So really understanding the participation in the community is all on your own terms. There's no commitment, no cost, only things to gain and value to gain. Yeah, I think that is my last slide. So I want to open it up to any questions before I show you the link for application. So once again, let's stop sharing screens so I can see your faces. And anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Hi, I have a question, a couple actually. So my first question is just about if you have co-founders in your teams, are they included as part of that sort of retreat process and part of the mentoring that goes on?
So the retreat process, I think we always ask for one co-founder to participate, just from a safety numbers and like the community. But during the mentoring itself with the coaches, our coaches do work with co-founders in their entire business team. So you do have that option. But if you, and Finn can add to the retreat part.
Yeah, so another piece I will add is part of the application process is so we do ask that there is like sort of like a primary, like if you do have a co-founder, we have like sort of a primary person who does attend the retreat. But like Susie said, the coaching, like we've had many that have co-founders and the coaches do work with both of them like throughout that first year as well. But one of the things that during the application process we have is an option to be able to add a co-founder while you're applying. So then you can both tag team and work on that together, which is also really fabulous.
Yeah, that is really good because our company's definitely made up of 2 people, not just myself. Fantastic. Thank you for that. And the second question I had is that perhaps it's a question for Becky as well, but in terms of that, the assignment of that $100,000, I've heard some mixed things and I don't know how that's sort of, but I believe that with the finalists, they determine the pool and how it's allocated. Is that correct? And sort of what is that process like to step through?
Yeah, I'll answer that first and then feel free to jump in. So we'll say that there's been many evolutions of this process since SheEO started, which is why you probably have heard many mixed things. In the beginning, it was when we had a pool of money and the ventures decided amongst themselves. So one first thing we'll say is that the pool of money is dependent on the number of activators, because activators give the money to the and where our fund is and the loan that's being paid back. So that determines the pool of the amount of money. In terms of how much you get, the new process we've tried with Australia and New Zealand for the first time is actually through this 3-month onboarding process where you get to understand us and we get to understand you, and we'll hopefully solve, and that's one of the things we're really good at, solving a lot of your financial needs with finances. If you need to hire, if you need a developer, if you need customers, if you need partners, if you need a network, we can give you those resources that may not actually be the money you need. So actually in New Zealand, we had 2 ventures who decided to not take money because they got all their problems solved and they didn't need the money. So in the 3-month process, you will work with your guide and our finances team to decide how much you need. It's up to $100,000 over 5 years. And if there's any milestones, that's also be discussed. And I will say it's, again, not on your terms. So it's not that we are telling you what it is. It is a co-creation process through the whole onboarding.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Susie. That was great.
Yeah, no, I see you have a few other questions. Any other questions?
I was going to jump in and add to that about the venture group that you're in, because it's like you're a little cohort. And so what happens is you get a whole weekend to either be together physically or to do weekend of calls together. And it's facilitated, and it's an opportunity to sort of deep dive with your group that's been voted in. And I'm still regularly interacting with the women that came in my cohort. That has been an amazing thing. And we know each other, more about each other's businesses than anybody else in the SheEO environment. But we're the only ones that know the money side of it. So when you get to the money part of it down the track, you hold that safe for each other. And it's the beginning of developing that trust in that community, because the relationship isn't you to SheEO, it's you to Susie and you to me and you to your one person in your cohort is still made up of 1,000 tendrils, like we're like fungi or something, that the networks are still relationships to one person. And it really does start with that venture group.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. And I think Becky, I was going to echo is that it's really about helping each other succeed. it's not, so one of the things we don't want is like, here's a pie and we're dividing it up and you get some, we don't get some. I think we're here to say we're creating abundance for everyone and we want everyone to succeed. And we want to resource each other, not just like trying to get the most for myself. So that is one thing that's also, again, very different in our venture process.
I had a question.
Yeah, hi Zoe.
Hi everyone, I'm Zoe, and I'm calling from Dharawal country in New South Wales. And I'm the founder and CEO of She's a Crowd, and we are the biggest geospatial data set of sexual assault and gender-based violence in the world. And we've been around for about 4 years. We have an anonymous reporting platform for survivors to share their stories. And I guess I just love what you're doing. I love that we're finally ready to apply for SheEO, because I've come to events and seen the community from afar for years now. Oh, really? That's really cool, Julie. Yeah, it's really exciting. The brand is getting really well known now, and globally as well. So we have a lot of survivors in the States as well. Oh yeah, Shalene, sorry, I'm now having a conversation with Julie in the chat. But my question, yeah, I love and I also want to say I love the feminist leadership model that you're, really like, showcasing here. I just think it's wonderful and we need more of it. I've currently got a round open and I can really tell you just exactly what you're saying. It's just so much harder when you're a woman, and it's just even that much harder when you're a woman running a feminist tech startup addressing gender-based violence. But my question is really around, like, it's pretty simple. I just want to know, like, I know you get so many applications and I know it must be so hard to choose. And I just wanted to know what would be that one thing, if you've got 2 excellent applications, that would make that application stand out to you?
This is such an interesting question, because this is the one thing that we say is that everyone votes differently and we're not dictating what is the right way to vote. So I will answer as an activator, and I would love other activators on call to answer from themselves. As an activator, I love learning about the story. I love learning about why this business. I also kind of do think about the business model. I think there's lots of activators who don't think about the business model. I am someone who does, but I just really want to know what your story is and why is this like the business that you want to create. And that to me is what I vote with, but every activator votes differently and we don't dictate how to vote. We don't tell people what's the right way to vote. So that is actually also the really interesting part of SheEO, is that there's no like criteria that you can, or a rubric. Everyone votes, I think, with their hearts around what it is that they like to see. But Becky, Julie, Kim, Finn, who are other activators, what makes you want to vote? Yeah, Julie.
Yeah, very fair answer. It's definitely what resonates with me. I'm not a finance person. I like the story. I like if it's in my wheelhouse of interest. So education is something of interest. And if the story is told really well, I surprise myself, but for falling into some of the ventures that I wouldn't have thought of. So I see so many HR apps that come through, but I saw one that I just loved how they told the story, and I love their unique identifier. I have been following them and obsessed with them forever. It was Puffling, that has now become, a friend. They didn't get funding, but they are still on my radar. And then, if I'm allowed to say this, there's been some women that are so gung-ho about getting funding to some of the ventures that weren't selected, that there's been funds that have created for that. So, and I'll talk more, about that. And like Shalene is doing some things around that. So even though this pipeline if you don't get selected, there will be 500 women that have seen your business and you will be on their radar. So the process in and of itself is valuable. And they said it before, it's not winner takes all. It's a marketing exercise. You will get feedback. You will get love. You will get, some people might ignore you, but that's the way it is, because everyone, again, is voting with their heart and they're told to vote with their gut.
And then a follow-up question, thank you so much, as well, would just be like, can we see who's on our panel?
So there's no panel. We all get randomly assigned a group of ventures that we don't even get to select. So I remember in Becky's year, really wanted to vote for Becky and went through all the applications until I can vote for Becky and went through like all the New Zealand applications. So you can vote for 10 or you can vote for 100. Again, we don't tell people how to do it, but we encourage like activators to vote on your own terms. So you would not know, and the activators don't know who they get assigned either. It's just a random process that we do make sure there's fair number of votes for everybody, but we also don't like match any specific activators to ventures.
And just to add to that, the first round, you're voting yes or no, that's it. So the women, all the voters, the activators saying yes, go to the first, go there. And even if there's no, everyone will get feedback. I got to tell you, so my first year doing this as an activator in the US, there was one very clever, I thought it was clever, venture that found people on LinkedIn that were SheEO activators and sent them a message. Some people might find that annoying. Other people might find that clever and ingenious and hustle. So there was nothing wrong with her doing that, but she was on my radar and I think I ended up voting for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the other part of here is that, this is why we say just be yourself, because there's no one way to win and there's no winner. So just be yourself, tell your story. And I think a lot of our activators are here to support you and like really believe in business. And whether you're selected or not, there's many ways to start connect with our community as well. Yeah, be yourself.
I would invite anybody, the group that is already ventures, there's several hundred, is there 120 now? Do you know what the venture number is, Susie?
120-ish.
And if you go onto the venture site and look at all the things they do, there's no formula except for that desire, that pure desire. And you're going to be so motivated and feel like my venture fits in with that. That's all you need, really. And I think a lot of us in the activators, when we're voting, like I'll get a group of 10 businesses and I'll yes 7 of them. I am a really bad first pass sieve because I really want everybody that applies is already pre-qualified themselves because they already realize that this is a great community to support the vision for their version of the better world. So in some ways it's heartbreaking at the end because I ended up having 8 ventures that I really, really, really loved. And I had a really hard time deciding which ones should get that vote. And what I would say is, regardless of what happens through the process, Julie's inviting you to jump in for the start of an experience and the start of a community. And even if you don't get to semi-finalist, because there's 75 applications and only 10 can go to semi-finalist, get in and be an activator. The wall between venture and activator is breaking down. It used to be there was the venture things and then there's the activator things, but actually now it's just like, hey, community, we've got these amazing resources. Get on these set of calls and learn about capital raising or systems or gender bias or whatever. And you can just, like, there's so much going on in the community that you actually have to force yourself to pick your favorites. Otherwise you'd be on calls all the time. So essentially the community is open regardless of whether you win that end spot, is what I guess I would like to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Becky. The last thing I'll just add there is just to say a lot of our ventures apply multiple times. And the first few times they did not get selected, and maybe on the second try and third try they got selected. So please don't be discouraged. And as I said, the community is always open. And a lot of ventures actually applied, didn't get selected, became an activator, and then applied again, or like decided that they already had everything they needed. So many different ways to join a part of community.
I think another thing that I would add on is that because the selection process, like, it's just in its nature, like at the heart of it is very supportive. You also, through that, like from activators voting, like I've supported so many of the applicants, even whatever stage that they got to, because I'm like, ooh, holiday shopping or something like that, or like, ooh, I've never heard of this thing, like, or this business. So I think that there's also that like process of during that is very is very lovely, as well as whether you get selected as a SheEO Venture, when you make it also to being a semi-finalist, you get to have access to the community for an entire year. And that's also like that entire network. And I think that's also a very lovely thing as well.
Thanks, Finn. Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to say I've been testing, I've gone into the application, and there's a playlist you can listen to while you're filling this application out. There's also wonderful videos. Also be patient. There's an animated GIF that will be animated for a bit. I don't know if Susie was going to go in there, but how cool. You have an entire playlist to listen to while you're filling it out and or when you're doing it work. So I just wanted to shout out, like, that's backwards, different, unique of what SheEO is.
Yes, thanks, Julie. So I was just going to give everybody the link to the application as well. But we'll leave you with the thought to say, what would you create if you were surrounded by radically generous women and non-binary folks? And if you're already creating it, please apply by June 10th at apply.sheeo.world. And you can go on that playlist that Julie was talking about. I'm happy to stay behind for a few extra minutes if anybody has any questions that you want to ask one-on-one. I also have office hours that Finn can drop in the links below, that if you want to sign up to work on your application with me, if you want to ask questions in specific cases, feel free to sign up for those. And thank you all for joining me today. Yes, thank you, Finn. The last thing I was going to say is feedback form. We take feedback very seriously as SheEO. We read all our feedback, and it's really, really important to us. So please take a moment to fill in the feedback forms. And we really appreciate that. And yeah, thanks you all for joining me. I'm excited to see your applications.
Thanks, Susie.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for explaining that. It's brilliant.
Feel free to reach out if you ever have any other questions, or you just want help, or drop in for office hours. Really, office hours could be the time that you just fill out the application too. Anything.